Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is where you are situated. It's 9 o'clock in the evening in Portugal where I am. I'm delighted to be able to join you today to talk about how we have implemented a training program in a biomedical research institution. I'm giving my perspective, which is obviously a European perspective. It's not 100%. It's not a generalized European perspective because it's very much my own perspective and my experience from something that I will tell you about. I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity, and I also want to send special thanks to my fellow course organizers, Luis Antunes and Andrea Costa. A lot of the things that I will be telling you about today we have really worked out together, and without this team this hasn't been the course it is. Who am I? I am a researcher and a group leader of a laboratory animal science group at Institute for Molecular and Cell Biology in Portugal. It's one of the larger publicly funded research institutions in Portugal. My background is I've got a degree in animal science and a PhD in ethology, animal behavior and animal welfare. That background is actually in agricultural animals, but I've been working with laboratory animals since 2001. And my research interests are animal behavior and welfare in research and research animal ethics. And I'm also coordinating training for researchers in our institution, and also with some activity external to the institution, and I've been doing that since 2005. And it is an activity that takes up quite a bit of my time and my attention, and I do enjoy it and find it important. So I'm going to try to see if I can get all the options of the technology here working, because I would be curious to see if I can. I would like to know who you are who are listening to me right now. So I'm going to try to run a poll with you, which is supposed to appear right now. Okay, I hope you can see it, and I would be very thankful if you would answer it by indicating which professional roles you have. If things are the way I wanted them to be, you should be able to select several. And I see people are pushing buttons here, so you are responding, which is great. I'll just let this go a little bit so that you've got the time to answer. Okay, let me see if I can give you the results. Okay, we've got 3 researchers, 7 technicians, 7 educators, 10 veterinarians, and 10 others, or maybe some of these are really combined in several people. In the same person, sorry. I've tried to do the next one because I'm also curious to know where you are. So if you could just choose the region where you work, that would be great. Okay, most people in Canada and the US, a couple of people in Europe and Latin America, and 1 in Australia and 1 in Asia. Okay, that's great. That's great to know. Okay, in this talk, I will talk about 2 challenges that we have been facing in our work in setting up training: how to set up a relevant and internationally recognized training in laboratory animal science in a context of little tradition, and how to meet the need for training new scientists coming in continuously into the research institutions. I'll share a couple of my opinions with you, and I would also want to hear yours. And we should have quite a lot of time for questions and discussion in the end of the talk. So to give you the background on laboratory animal science in Portugal, during the last decade, 2000 to 2010, Portugal increased massively its investment in research, its public funding for research. And during this 10-year period, there was about a 400% increase in research project funding, which obviously corresponds to an equal size or maybe even bigger increase in number of people working in research, a substantial proportion of them in life sciences research, where the animal experiments come in as a possibility. Before 2004, there was regular training in laboratory animal science in only one single institution, so it meant that no more than 30 scientists a year could be trained. And in 2005, faced with this challenge, the competent authority decided to issue provisional personal licenses for researchers that had substantial experience in working with animals. These licenses were issued for 2 or 5 years, depending on how long that experience was. And in 2005, when I started to work with this, we had 20 such provisional licenses only at our institutions, to which obviously one need to add at least another 30 or 35 people that didn't have enough experience to get a provisional license, so needed basic training right from the start. And then we needed to provide training for those people with provisional licenses who actually didn't have formal training, and also whose licenses would expire within a short period of time. So that was the first challenge we faced, how to provide training in this context, also when people were not used to having this training available or to look for it because it hadn't been available. We wanted the training to be relevant for the researchers so that we wouldn't have to chase them down to take the training. We wanted the training to be internationally recognized so that we knew that our students going somewhere else would still be able to have their training recognized by the competent authorities or institutions in other countries. And also, we wanted to build on and to develop our own competencies. So we didn't want to buy this in, we didn't want to set this up on our own. Since we're in Europe, it was very obvious for us to look at the FELASA recommendations, which at that time at least were the only formal recommendations for training courses. And both Louise Antunes and myself had taken a FELASA Category C course in the Netherlands, so that was the sort of the format that we had looked, that we had experienced ourselves, and we decided that a Category C course would be what best match our institutional needs at the point. And we also wanted to draw on collaborations that we already had, so we looked around among the collaborations we had, who had great experience in organizing training, and we invited the team from Copenhagen, Axel Kornerup Hansen and Dorte Brattby Sørensen, to join us, and they helped us out with the first couple of courses that we organized. The FELASA Category C course, which probably many of you know about, is directed for persons who are responsible for directing or designing procedures. It's an 80-hour course combining theory with practical exercises, and at least in the setups of the course that I know of, also a lot of group assignments. The course curriculum has 8 categories: biology and husbandry, microbiology and disease, health hazards and safe practices, design and conduct of animal experiments, anesthesia, analgesia and experimental procedures, alternatives to procedures on animals, ethics and legislation, and analysis of scientific literature. If we view those categories in a bit of a different way, and also at least with an attempt to portray them in with the dimension, with the amount of time that we dedicate to them in the training. They cover three main aspects of using laboratory animals, or of training people that use laboratory animals. The aspects that have to do with doing good science, the aspects that have to do with taking good care of animals, and the aspects that have to do with meeting the expectations of society regarding good research practice. And as you see, of course, these overlap a lot. These three spheres are not at all isolated. Having started to give these courses, we quite soon actually wanted to step up our ambitions. So we looked at accreditation as a way to guarantee quality and recognition of our course. And we wanted to ensure national recognition. We wanted people to be convinced that this course would meet international standards and that it was actually being checked for that. And again, we also wanted to strengthen the recognition of the certificate for our training students when they went somewhere else. So we looked at FELASA accreditation. Again, at that point, it was the only accreditation program existing for this kind of training, and it still is, I believe. It sets a minimum requirement for having run two courses before applying for accreditation. So we could apply in January 2007, then we had completed two courses and knew more or less that we would use the same setup. To get the accreditation involved quite a bit of paperwork, much of which obviously is beneficial for the course planning, because it means taking your course seriously, working out all important aspects of it. The paperwork to be delivered is a presentation of the course program in quite a lot of detail, the teachers and their qualifications, a presentation of the examination methods, and also a presentation of the student feedback that had been obtained in the previous courses. After having submitted that, we waited a few months for a response and then entered into, I think, what I would rather describe as a dialogue with the accreditation board. Because obviously, as I think happens in most cases, there were things that they thought we could explain better, and there are also things they told us we could do better. So it took us 2 rounds of changes to our setup of the course, and in our case these were the most substantial ones, were to expand the amount of practical training, and it took in all around 12 months for us to complete the accreditation. Now this is obviously our experience, and I understand that this must possibly this could take more or it could take less, depending on how much changes are needed and how long it takes for the course organizers to bring about those changes. Working under the FELASA accreditation, we've now got 5 years, a bit more than 5 years experience of that. So our first accreditation period of 5 years expired last year, and we're just entering our second 5-year period. And during this period, we have been submitting annual reports of courses organized and students approved, of the changes introduced, of the examinations, and also the student feedback. We've paid €385 per year plus €5 per student certificate issued. So this is for each student that passed the course. And there is also a site visit per 5-year accreditation period, and we've got one, I think, 3 years ago. This is what working under the accreditation has been on paper, but in practice, of course, both the reports and the site visit has involved a quite a lot of quality assessment, external and internal, a lot of us looking at how we do things, how they work, and how we could do them better. And I would say that the course that we run today is the result of our continuous work to improve, largely stimulated by the accreditation. And stimulated by the accreditation in two ways. Through direct feedback from the accreditation board, and especially during the site visit. The site visit was one entire day during one of our running courses. We had 2 members of the accreditation board spending time with us, spending quite a bit of time going through paperwork, our archives of stuff, quite a bit of time talking to students in the ongoing course and with previous students, and also quite a bit of time talking to us. But the other source of stimulation to keep up the quality assessment and quality improvement has been through student feedback, and the accreditation has been very important also through that because of the large focus, that large emphasis that they place on student feedback. So the course that we have today, that I will now talk to you a bit about the course, and I'll talk also about the student interactions that I think that that have been very important for us, and that I think is the strength of our course. The teaching approach that we use today, this has been changing, but this is the approach we use today and we plan to use for the near future, is what is called the blended learning approach, meaning that we combine e-learning with traditional lectures, with practical classes, and with the protocol preparation, which is a group assignment that runs across the 2-week course. We run the course as a 2-week continuous course. There is of course a weekend in between, but it's not a modular course. It starts on one Monday and it ends on the Friday the week after. E-learning is one of the latest changes we've introduced into the course. We introduced it in response to student feedback, to give the students better control of the time and to optimize the use of teacher-student contact time, so that we would not spend valuable classroom time with international specialist teachers talking about very basic aspects. So the e-learning is provided through the basic training is provided through the e-learning mechanism. Focusing on developing the e-learning platform also meant that we expanded the course site, the website we use for the course, quite a lot. So there we now include the e-lessons. The e-lessons are self-contained. They are interactive as far as this is possible, so to make the learning experience or the studying experience more stimulating, but also to allow that the students leave a footprint in the platform, so that we can see that they've actually been, each individual students have actually been into the lessons and completed the lessons. And as I said, the lessons provide introductory content to almost all topics, with the more advanced and the more applied content being delivered in a classroom lecture that comes later in the course. We also centralize all the information that the students need for the course in the website. So that's where they can go and get the lecture handouts if they want to print them or if they want to download them for the future. And that's where we post changes and updates that happen during the course. So that saves us from sending a lot of email to students. It's useful in that way as well. The lectures, as I said, they focus on more advanced content, and as far as possible we have internationally recognized specialists giving the lectures. Generally we have people who have at least a PhD in the relevant topic. with only a couple of exceptions. And another important standard that's not on the slide is that for all the lecturers and also teachers of all kinds in this course, where this is relevant, they should have completed the FELASA CAT-C course themselves. And I think the only exception we make for that is for the teachers of statistics and of legislation, because they have a different background and it wouldn't make sense for them to take a lab animal science course. The practical classes are animal handling. We've got 2 sessions for that. That's been a tricky one because we've learned over time to deal with people's fears and people's unwillingness to admit that they are afraid of handling laboratory rodents. The way we found out is the best way to go about it is to have 2 sessions, one which is very simple and where we don't demand more than that the students touch the animals, get familiar with them and learn to lift them in and out of the cages. Only in the second handling class are they asked to be able to restrain rodents. And we also offer a facultative extra practice for those students who don't feel confident enough after those 2 handling classes to move on to the next week, where they will have to do procedures on animals. So the 2 first sessions are on live animals. The 2 first points here are on live animals. The necropsy, the dissection is obviously on euthanized animals, and the suture practice is on alternatives. So we try to consider the 3 R's in our practical classes: reduction by using surplus animals from the animal facility that would be euthanized anyway, replacement by the suture practice without animals, and refinement by practicing procedures on anesthetized animals. The students obviously need to learn to restrain live and awake animals, but they will practice injections and so on anesthetized animals that are euthanized after the practice. The protocol preparation and presentation, I think this is quite common on FELASA CAT-C courses, all that I know uses this approach. The project consists in preparing a complete protocol for a research project. We tell the students as if it was for them to present it to an ethics committee, and a working groups of 4 to 6. The projects are presented and defended orally during the last day of the course, and the students get to hand in the corresponding PowerPoint file on the day before. We don't ask them to do more paperwork because they got 2 very intense weeks, and we don't want to create unnecessary work for them. So that's why we are happy with the PowerPoint file that they need for the presentation anyway. And we schedule around 20 hours across the timetable for the protocol preparation time. Examination consists in individual written exam on the last morning of the course, and the protocol presentation on the group assignments in the afternoon of the last day. We have a minimum requirement for an average of 60% for the 2 components, and none of them below 50%. And we also have obligatory participation in e-lessons and practical classes, and we have tutors that assess that the students are able to perform the techniques in the practical classes. The students get a certificate if they fulfill the requirements. With this certificate, the students need to apply to their respective competent authority for licensing. So the course is not an automatic driving license for this. It gives the certificate needed to obtain the driving license. We also ask students right from the start to give us feedback. So we hand them out feedback forms on the first day and ask them to keep on filling in the feedback as they've been going through the classes or the different exercises, the different practicals. And engaging with students is important for us because it makes the course more rewarding for all of those involved. It helps to maintain and to improve quality. It's important for the accreditation. It confers a responsibility. Engaged students learn more, and we want this course to be, for as many students as possible, we want this course to be perceived as a resource that is something more than the minimum learning to get a license. And because we also sell this course outside our own institution, we sell places on the course in our institutions, because customer satisfaction and marketing is obviously also plays a role for us. We have used those detailed course evaluation questionnaires since the start of the course, but as we've been running the course for a number of years, we also increasingly engage directly with the students in smaller groups. We use the course evaluation reports very much. We summarize the student feedback, we share it with teachers, we go through them and discuss them in detail between the three of us, Louise, Andrea and myself, so that we can consider changes that we need to introduce for a next edition of the course. And we send a summary both of those reports and of the changes we want to introduce to the FELASA accreditation committee when we do the annual update of information. Changes that we have been introduced during the period that we have been working with this. Well, there are a couple of things we have learned that we don't change anymore. We got the same critiques every year, and if we do it one way, we get one type of critique, and criticism. If we do it the other way, we get another type of criticism. We always get a few students who think there should be more animal handling and more procedures, and then we got another few students that tell us that it is sad that so many animals are used in this course, and we could respect the 3 hours more in the practical training. And we also get students every year telling us they want more statistics. But statistics is already right now the discipline that's got the most hours in the course curriculum. And when we offered a specialized course in statistics for animal experiments, we got less than 10 people taking the course. So we are not quite sure what people really want, but we have come to the conclusion that we can't do anything else in the course than what we're doing right now. Then there are things we adjust continuously, which is the duration of lectures and overlaps, because as sometimes we change lectures or sometimes the content change, this needs to be adjusted every year. And a major change for us that paved the way for much more engagement was the introduction of e-learning that freed considerable time for targeted teacher contact with students. The e-learning now provides about 25% of the theoretical content. And one of the things that we were able to start doing with when we had freed time through e-learning was to have tutorials with the groups during the group assignments. The group assignments take up 25% of the course time, and it's 50% of the examination for the students. So it's a very important part of the course. And we felt it was important that we engaged more with the students so that we made sure that the students engaged with these group assignments. So we now do this, spending 2 times 20 minutes per group. We do 2 tutorials. I do the first one on the first week, around Wednesday in the first week, where I sit down with every group to discuss how the proposed projects relate to each student's interests and own work, and try to get a feel for the group dynamics, so that if there is something that really doesn't work, if there is a group which really doesn't work, we can do something about that while it's still possible to do it. We are still only on the 3rd day of the course. The second week tutorial is run by Louise and Tunis. At that point, that's a week later, the students are already well ahead with their group assignments, and they've got a number of specific questions that they want to raise. Since Louise is a specialist on anesthesia and analgesia, they would want to discuss what anesthetic protocol would be the best for their experiment. and there will also maybe a lot of other more general questions that they like to discuss. And Louise that week also gets an overall view of how the project is proceeding. If by any chance there would be a project that is very far behind, there would still be a couple of days for the students to catch up, and then we would be able to do something to tell them that they need to speed up their work. Our impressions from running those tutorials are that the first tutorial is essential to detect critical problems with group composition. We need to balance different degrees of experience and stubbornness. The worst possible scenario is to have one very experienced and very stubborn, very strong-minded person, and then inexperienced people in the group, because that means that the group will all run with the leader, and there will be little room for the others to interact. We've also found that this is very stimulating for us. We got very interesting discussions with the students. We are talking science with them, and we are actually talking science with them already in the first tutorial. They start to have scientific considerations on how to design their experiments and bring up those questions with me. What kind of treatments groups should they have? Should they have sham groups, or don't they need sham groups, etc. And our impression is that we've got much improved project protocols presented in the end. They are much more complete and much more sophisticated, and we always learn quite a lot from seeing those protocol presentations. So overall, this is a very positive experience. With more time freed, we are also able to invest more in more closely accompanying the students in the practical classes. So we've got one tutor who follows the same group of 3 to 5 students along the practical classes, and you can see this on the figures. We've got the Tutor training on the top figure, and we've got the dissection training on the bottom figure. So the students are always accompanied. There is always someone for them to ask. They don't need to shout across the room to get a teacher, or they don't need to wait for a teacher who's with another group. And the tutors are able to identify students' difficulties that need to be addressed. So the tutors sit down after the practical training session, when they still remember what happened and which students they had, and they check boxes to see for the demands of practical competences, and decide if there is a student who eventually might need some extra training, who might need to be approached for some extra practical training. Okay, this is the FELASA Category C course. It's a course for people who are quite high up in the activity on running animal experiments. They are responsible for directing and designing procedures. We have trained so far since 2005 417 such researchers. Initially we had very senior researchers, those with the provisional licenses I mentioned in the beginning. Presently, as those senior researchers have been trained, we now mainly have postdocs and PhD students in the course. But of course, these are not all the people who need training. These are not all the persons involved in research who needs training. And that takes us to the second challenge, which we have faced more recently in the last 3 or 4 years, which is the need to provide basic training frequently. This because there are new researchers coming into the institution throughout the year. There are new PhD students, there are new master students, there may be someone who has not used animal models before, but now their research line has taken such a turn that they want to start to work with an animal model. And there is a need to ensure that these people know enough about animals and enough about how to carry out procedures in order to minimize animal suffering so that they can be able to work on their own in the animal facility, or they are allowed to do hands-on work with the animals. These people need basic training, and they also need this training to be available frequently because they cannot move on. They cannot get started with their work before they've got this training, and most of the times they want to get started with the work yesterday because they've got this great new idea, and they've got these mice being shipped in, and now they want to start to work with them. Okay, would you just hold a second here? Hello? 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 Okay, excuse me. I thought there was a problem with the line, but I think it's okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about this. I'll get back on track. So facing this challenge of providing basic training, and frequently we were able to draw on our experiences that we used in setting up the Category C course. Obviously, we would look at the FELASA recommendations again. Now it's Category B, that is for persons carrying out animal experiments. And the recommendations is 40 hours of theoretical and practical training. And we use this to set up our introductory course in laboratory animal science, where we use a combination of e-learning. We deliver almost all the theory through e-learning. Then there are taught practical classes with technicians from the animal facility and from our training center. And then there is tutor-led practical training. And all these aspects are important for the course to be available frequently. We have a course every 3 months, so 4 times a year. The course got to be available frequently because it's a requirement for the animal facility to give access to the entry in the facility is that the students have taken the course. And the combination of e-learning and the tutor-led practical training makes it possible for us to give the course frequently, because e-learning takes very little investment from our side as educators, and the tutor-led practical training is the students working with a trained tutor in their own research group, in their own lab. So that's not a burden on the training center, but it's shifted to the lab where the researcher comes from. Okay, we've got another almost 20 minutes, and I'm done with the part where I'm going to talk directly about our course. And I'd wanted us to share a couple of views with each other, and I'm going to share my opinions with you. But I don't want to color your opinions by mine, so I'm going to start by asking for your opinions. And I'd start to ask you to indicate what kind of training of the 4 alternatives that I've given here that you think best meets the training needs of an early stage researcher, for example a PhD student who is starting to work with animals and who will mainly be doing procedures in animals, so hands-on work with animals. Training on the job with researcher supervisor, training on the job with a technician or veterinarian supervisor, in-house course, or course organized by institution with specialized competence. And I'm just waiting while you're filling this in. You're still filling this in. Okay, I'm going to push the results. So the majority vote is for training on the job with lab animal technician or veterinarian supervisor, but with 41%, 34 course organized by institution with specialist competence, 13 for in-house course, and 10 for training on the job with the researcher supervisor. Then I'm going to ask you to indicate what you think best suits the training need of a person who has experience in animal research, animal-based research, and who plans research projects with animals. So not only hands-on work, but actually project planning. Training on the job with more experienced researcher, training on the job with veterinarian or animal technician, no need for further training, in-house training, in-house formal training or formal training organized by the institution with specialized competence. Okay, I'm going to push the results for you. Okay, so I can see that your there is a clear preference in both the situations for training on the job with a veterinarian or animal technician and formal training by a specialized institution. Quite a few votes also for training on the job with a more experienced researcher. And some support for no need for further training and in-house formal training as another alternative. Right. So the way that I see this on eyes, probably with my eyes probably colored by the FELASA recommendations, we are looking at two types of people who need training: people who know previous training or experience who will start to work with animals, and people with previous experience and training and who will have a more wider responsibility, not only to perform procedures but also to plan projects. And I've called these training needs for basic and for advanced. And I'd argue that people with no previous training or experience need to know basic aspects of animal biology and basic aspects of procedures with animals, because quite a lot of those people may have a background in the life sciences, but they may know very little about other animals than humans. Little about their physiology, little about their biology, about their behavior, about their needs and their functioning, and they need to learn about the species they work with, and they need to learn that a rat is not a little human, but it's a completely different animal. And of course they also need practical training in procedures if they're going to start to do practical procedures. This training needs to be available frequently at a relatively low cost, so that a lot of people can take the training, and so we don't get into a situation where only a couple of people in the lab got the training and they are supposed to train the others. And it also in my opinion, and this is the part where I'm sharing your opinion with you, so really what I'm saying now is what I think with the experience that I've got, that this kind of training needs to be integrated into the functioning of the specific institution. So while they're doing this training, ideally people should also learn how the animal facility works and learn to get to know the people there and how to interact with the veterinarian and with the technicians in the animal facility. And I would argue that the local veterinarian and animal welfare officer is very well placed to to deliver this course. And if you will see a cat passing the webcam now, you'll see a cat's tail at least. I apologize for that. I'm at home, not at work. That's why the cat is here. So this is for the basic training. For the advanced training, it has to have a wider scope, in my view. It needs to consider all aspects of laboratory animal use, including statistics, science and society, ethics, and project planning. So not only down to the bench, down to the cage level work with animals, but a whole set of considerations around research with animals. This training needs to be advanced in the sense that it should fit into a PhD student training program. It should not be more basic than that. It should, in the logics of that, it should be given by specialists who are up to date with the present level of knowledge and the present research in their respective fields. And because of that, sorry, I'm skipping slides here. Because of that, it's probably not something that a lot of institutions will be able to deliver themselves, because it takes a different faculty, takes a different set of teachers to do it. We clearly need both, because we've got both these groups of people, and many persons will be first in the left-hand group, and later on in their career they will be in the right-hand group. They will start with no experience, and if they stay in science and in using animals, they will be people who start to plan research, and they will belong to those that need more advanced training. And we also know from papers that come out every year what happens when people don't have sufficient training. We know that we have people who don't use appropriate amounts of or appropriate choices of analgesic anesthetics. We know that experimental design is suboptimal. We know that there are shortcomings in the understanding of animal biology, and all this has an impact on the welfare of the animals and on the quality of the science. So there really is a challenge to provide the right training to avoid as much as possible that this kind of suboptimal practice research happens. So the take-home message that I would like to give is that the challenge is to set up training so that it is perceived as a resource worth investing in, not an obstacle or an obligation or a minimum requirement that has to be filled. I'm not saying that we've necessarily been able to meet that challenge fully, but I hope that we've gone at least some way towards it. And I hope that you are also wanting to join us on this way. And from own experience, I can tell you that you can go a long way combining motivation, wise use of existing resources and expertise, and a willingness to listen to students and to adapt training to their needs. For more information about what we do, there's an email address on this slide where you can contact us if you would want to know something specifically you're interested in collaborating. And you've got a website address on the slide, and you've also got a website, if I'm able to push it from the okay, you've also got I'm also see if I can show it to you, or you can click on it and connect to it. You've got 2 web links in the presentation as well, and they will take you to this home page, this website, which is our training website. And if you click on any of the options here, you'll learn more about the courses that we've got. And if you click on the it's the bottom right corner, setting up training in laboratory animal science, we can help you. You can also learn about offers the resources that we have developed for people who want to develop their own training with some support in areas and disciplines where they have little expertise. And we've got some 7 or 8 minutes for asking questions. So would you please ask the question and use the chat function, the question and answer function, to ask questions, and I will look at them and I will read them out to you. I've got a question that was raised sometime during the session. What topics that we consider to be basic training, and I think I have partly answered that, in that this is what people really need to do when they really need to learn if they've never worked with animals and if they know very little about animals. So basic aspects of biology and about taking care of animals and basic aspects of procedures. I've got a question here about how this training program will change with the new European directive requirements of, let me see if I can read the full question. Okay, how this training is going to change with the new European directive requirements. Well, this is a new challenge for us, and I haven't included it here because we are still trying to follow the recommendations. We are trying to keep up with the recommendations that are being developed by the working group that works with the European Commission, and to discuss how we can integrate those in our training. What I see very clearly, what is coming out of that discussion right now, is 2 things. It's a greater focus on species, and we welcome that a lot. We run a course, I didn't say that, but our course is completely rodent focused, and that's great for people who will do rodent work. It's not so great for people who will do wildlife research or large animal research, as there is no other course in Portugal at present, so they will come to our course. So we would welcome the possibility to do species-specific courses, and we are already working on that on the B course. Another change with the directive is the greater focus on assessing competences and qualifications and on practical qualifications. And I think we've already gone quite a bit towards that in our course with the tutor work. But we need to, especially in the basic course where we let the students have part of the training with tutors or research groups, we will need to invest more in how to prepare those tutors and also how to assess the students. Most courses are aimed to use rodents. What about courses on zebrafish and other aquatics? Did anybody already implement this? Well, actually, we are very lucky because in Portugal there is a great research center for marine research, and they've developed the FELASA Category C course with which we collaborate. Sorry, FELASA Cat B course. So there's a 40-hour course focusing exclusively on marine organisms. I think that's excellent, and that's really very much needed. And if anyone is looking for that course, I can also provide the contact details with that. Okay. And as I also said, there are also other species training needs that are different from our rodent-based traditional rodent course, and I'd very much like to start to see wildlife research courses being developed, as well as maybe agricultural animal courses. In many places they don't exist right at the moment, so that's a need. Okay, I think that was the questions that I've been seeing coming in right now. I'd like to thank all of you very much for being here with me today. This is the end of the seminar. Here's my email address if you have more questions, and you've got the email address for more information about our training opportunities, as well as websites, a couple of slides further back in the presentation. And these slides will be available after the conference as well, so you will be able to come back to them. Thank you very much to the audience. Thank you very much to the organizers. This is the end of this seminar. Bye-bye.